Hello, I'm Richard Raffan, and in this video I'm going to show you how I use my asymmetric bowl gouge, and at the end you'll see how I sharpen it. This is a piece of London plain, and I'm going to be cutting it with a 1/2 inch asymmetrically ground bowl gouge. So this is the roughing cut to start with. So you can see that the shaving, it's a fairly thick shaving, and it comes off the left wing of the tool. And this is a fairly, I want pretty much a convex curve here. I don't want anything too straight because I find that's just too grabby. I'd rather go for a slightly thinner, not quite so wide shaving as you might get, but go for something thicker. So the wood comes off pretty fast. Normally a shaping cut like this, done with the wing of the tool, the bevel isn't rubbing. All I want is a lot of wood off quickly. When I want to make a shear cut straight up the side, then I can use the point of the tool just above the nose of the tool on the right wing. Tool starts on its side, and I can roll it upright because this is a deep fluted gouge, and up on the inside here I've got support for the tool. You can't do this with a shallow gouge, a spindle gouge. Right, so that's a reasonable shaving coming off. The cleanness of the cut comes off just where there's a little mark of dust there. That's where the cleanness of the cut comes from, and then the nose of the tool just kind of turns the shaving over. Gently into space, so don't tear the end grain off too much. Now I'll show what this tool is much more useful for. Now, trying to get round a corner like this with any kind of long bevel, I was trying it with a spindle gouge, for instance, which has a 45-degree bevel on the nose. I can get in there all right. I can cut round to there. I might even get round the corner a bit further. But now I'm getting really quite challenged keeping that bevel riding. Oh, I wasn't expecting to be able to do that. Didn't come up too badly at all. But normally I wouldn't expect to get round there with a with a spindle gouge. I would be using this, where I've got, with the steep bevel, I've got a much better angle of approach. I'll start here. Glues up. And much easier. Start up with the flute upright this time with the back cut. And that's the real advantage of the steep steep bevel on the right wing. I'm just going to clean up the end grain, or the top face here, and I do that with the tool coming at an angle. Need the rest around a little bit more. Just using the right wing. Tool's over on its side. Now this can use the left wing also for taking a cut, just truing up the bottom. Basically have the tool on its side, squeeze the tool in. This is a 3/8, but you'll probably get a better view if I do it with a larger one. This is the 1/2 inch bowl gouge, deep fluted bowl gouge. Having got a rim clean, I can roll the tool over with the bevel rubbing, take a shear cut back to the middle. So now you're going to see using the 1/2 inch deep fluted bowl gouge with the asymmetric grind, hollowing a bowl. So first I'm going to flatten this off. This is fairly rough, this piece of maple. So using the left wing of the tool, rolls right on its side, rest is just a shade high. All I want is a smooth surface there. Then I can roll the tool over and take a shear cut back to the centre. And that's that. Now it's starting to hollow. I keep the gouge on its side, pivot the edge into the wood, rotate it very slightly anti-clockwise. Down past the original hole, which was for the screw chuck. So in this situation, as I'm cutting towards there, I'm going to have the end of the handles just hitting the tool, the the lathe bed. So just bring the rest up a wee bit. So tool starting on its side, I've got the bevel lined up with the direction I want to go, which is in it at a slight angle. Once I'm in there, I can then rotate the tool slightly anti-clockwise to get a better shaving and head off to the center. And once I'm at center, then I've got to roll the tool back on its side so I go across the middle. Normally I have a depth hole. I'm going to drill that. This was with a 3/8 spindle gouge. Just a little bit in there. Now I'm going to go line the bevel up. One of the purposes of having the asymmetric grind is that with a longer bevel on the nose, I've got a better angle of approach. Here, if I had a very steep bevel on the nose, I've got to start with the handle way down here, and that's just not so comfortable. I've got to reach over the bed. So, come down the side here, tools on its side. I've rolled it slightly anti-clockwise to get the better shaving. Then I roll it on to the steeper bevel as I go across the bottom. It's almost kind of two tools in one. The thing is, I very rarely go right to the bottom using the gouge. I typically go down to about here, about 2/3 of the way down, and then use a scraper the rest of the way because I feel I have more control over the shape. Right, just do a few more. This is just going to be a roughed out bowl because the wood's still a little bit green, although being maple it's fairly stable. Don't expect this bowl to distort too much. So that's about it. Well, that could be a little bit cleaner, I suppose. I'm in roughing out mode. I'll just do a final cut. Not too bad. I'm not very good at going right the way into the middle, but it's certainly good enough to sand. So that's about it for the turning, and now I'll show you how it's ground. This is my 1/2-inch bowl gouge, made by Henry Taylor, this one. This is typical of the gouges I used to use when I first developed this asymmetric shape. I was using a 6-inch grinder, 150mm diameter wheels, which inevitably got much smaller with use. So I was often grinding on a 5-inch diameter wheel or less, which meant that I had a very fragile edge. And I got into the habit of grinding a long main bevel and then just touching up the first 4 or 5 millimeters, kind of 1/8 of an inch. And that worked very well, and I suspect now it'd be called a 60-40 grind or something like that. But that was where I came from originally, so often my tools look pretty scruffy down in here with multi-facets, but a single facet just where it counts, just around the edge. These days I'm using a CBN wheel, 200mm diameter, which is 8-inch. It never changes shape, so my bevels tend to be a lot better these days. So the main features of this tool are that the curve here is fairly full. I don't want too long and straight an edge because although that's quite good for shear scraping on some forms, and you get a very wide shaving, you don't necessarily get a very thick one, whereas this one produces a not quite so wide shaving, but it's thick, so the wood comes off very quickly. And then on the right side, you can see it gets steeper and steeper on the right. And in my earlier tools in the early 70s, I used to have this nearly straight across, but I found now that this is far more useful, which you'll have seen in the video. Before doing a major regrind, rather than just a touch-up, I hone out the flute, use a bit of old abrasive. This is 240 grit, and what I want to do is just take what there was in the way of a burr off. Now what I'm after when I grind this tool is a full curve on the left wing, a nice convex curve, so I find that takes away more wood than a straight edge does, a straight wing. And then on the right ring, which is much shorter, that's also got a curve, and I want a bevel nearly 45 degrees on the end of the tool and much steeper up here, and I don't want too much metal around in here. Doing this by hand, I can roll the tool over further than would normally be rolled over if you were using a jig. So I can start off, bring the bevel shoulder onto the wheel, and then raise the handle until with some metals you'll get some sparks. Chances are I won't here, but you'll see the highlight on the edge change colour when there's a single bevel coming up to the edge. And the idea is not to push the tool hard against the wheel, just rest it against the wheel, and so it's rather like turning the wood. You let the wood come to the tool, you let the wheel come to the tool. Here's the edge changing slightly. So that side will be fine. Now go from the nose, and this time I go straight up. And then where I can control the shape better than if it's across at the side. If you have the tool at this angle, then it's very easy to make this side straight. And that has its uses, but it's not something I use. I don't use this tool for scraping very often. Now this wheel takes nearly 5.5 minutes to slow down, so I just use this little stick, and we'll come round and have a look at all that from the side. And that's sharp.